Keith Zotto seemed like an average suburban dad living with wife, 2 kids, house in Aurora. But behind closed doors, his life was cracking under the weight of jealousy, control, and rage. What started as marital tension spiraled into obsession, until one night he made a fatal choice. He killed his wife, Amber. This isn't just a crime story, it's a descent. In this video, we'll break down how a seemingly ordinary man unraveled and what turned him into a killer.
She's in there.
In the months leading up to June 29th, 2019, Keith lived in a world saturated with tension and discontent. His home in Aurora, meant to be a haven, had become a crucible of conflict. Keith and Amber frequently clashed over finances, mounting bills, the costs of raising 2 children, and dwindling savings. In Keith's mind, every time Amber left the house, every text she received, or every distracted glance became evidence of betrayal. He began monitoring her, interrogating her, and each of Amber's responses only fueled his anger, as if she were deliberately hiding something. According to Joel Norris's model of criminal psychology, Keith was in the aura phase, where familial stress and a sense of lost control rendered him unstable. Keith was not a premeditated murderer, but the repetitive arguments etched an image of Amber as an enemy in his mind. He felt trapped, a man burdened with heavy responsibilities, a father tasked with keeping his family intact, yet threatened by a wife he believed was betraying him. Alcohol, which Keith regularly consumed in the evenings, became a dangerous catalyst. It blurred his rationality, amplified his suspicions, and made it easier for him to fantasize about violent scenarios to punish Amber. Keith began to see Amber not just as his wife, but as the source of all his suffering. His jealousy was not a fleeting emotion, but a smoldering flame, fed by arguments and sleepless nights. In criminal psychology, perpetrators of domestic violence often enter a trolling phase, focusing their resentment on a specific target. The pressures of life further pushed Keith into darkness. He faced the demands of raising 2 children at an age requiring care and guidance. Yet instead of seeking solutions, Keith blamed Amber as if she were the root of all his troubles. His controlling tendencies grew stronger, and he began imposing restrictions on Amber, from checking her phone to questioning her whereabouts. These behaviors were not just signs of jealousy, but desperate attempts to keep Amber within his grasp. Keith kept these dark thoughts to himself, letting them fester into an internal storm. Those around him, neighbors, friends, even Amber's family, saw no signs of his transformation. He maintained the facade of a diligent father, but inwardly he was losing control, swept into a maelstrom of resentment and suspicion. On the night of June 29th, 2019, the Aurora home became the stage for a tragedy. Keith and Amber argued again, this time more fiercely than ever. The dispute began with familiar issues, unpaid bills, family duties, but quickly escalated into Keith's accusations of Amber's infidelity. Exhausted by his baseless suspicions, Amber may have declared her intent to leave, to escape the suffocating marriage. To Keith, those words were a dagger to his heart. He felt his authority, as husband, father, and man, under threat. In a drunken haze, with alcohol clouding his judgment, Keith could not bear the thought of Amber abandoning him, shattering the family image he had fought to maintain. Keith snatched Amber's car keys, trying to prevent her from leaving. But this act could not quell the inferno of rage within him. In a fateful moment, Keith grabbed a gun, a weapon he may have kept in the house as a symbol of power. Criminal psychology labels this the capture phase, where the perpetrator unleashes accumulated resentment through violence. Keith aimed at Amber's head, a target he knew would be lethal. Amber, in her final terrifying moment, likely raised her hands in defense, perhaps pleading or trying to stop him. But Keith did not relent. The gunshot rang out, and Amber collapsed, blood pooling on the floor. In that moment, Keith may have felt a perverse sense of release, as if he had reclaimed the control he believed he had lost. Shooting Amber in the head was not a spontaneous reaction, but a deliberate choice, reflecting direct intent under criminal law. Keith wanted Amber dead. Alcohol, as Keith later claimed, caused him to black out, may have lowered his inhibitions, but it did not erase his intent. In his mind, killing Amber was a way to punish her for betrayal, to prevent her departure, and to assert his ultimate authority. This was the culmination of a cycle of domestic violence, where Keith transitioned from verbal control to lethal action. Keith's psyche in this moment was a volatile mix of anger, jealousy, and desperation. He did not kill Amber merely to end an argument, but to eliminate a threat to his ego. Amber, with her intent to leave, had become a symbol of Keith's failure, and he could not let her prevail. His violent act aligned with the psychological profile of domestic abusers who use force to reassert dominance when feeling threatened. Keith did not think of the two children sleeping in the house, nor the consequences of his actions. In his mind, there was only rage and the need for control. After Amber fell, Keith did not panic, as one might expect from someone who had just committed a heinous crime. Instead, he became cold and calculating, as if the act had awakened a different facet of his being. Keith dragged Amber's body to the garage, placed her in a large trash bin, and covered her with carpet and debris to conceal her.
She's in there.
This act was not just an attempt to hide the body, but a demonstration of Keith's emotional detachment. He could continue living in the house, sleeping in a room near where Amber's body was decomposing, and caring for his two children as if nothing had happened. Keith did not stop at hiding the body. He orchestrated an elaborate deception to mislead Amber's family and the police. He fabricated a story that Amber had taken her own life, presenting a suicide note with lines like, "I haven't been the best wife," and a chilling request for Amber's mother, Betty, to identify my body. The note, which investigators later suspected was forged or coerced, was a cornerstone of Keith's plan. He called Betty, claiming Amber had left after writing the note, maintaining a facade of normalcy. When police tried to contact him, Keith ignored their calls, as if he believed he could sustain the lie indefinitely. This behavior places Keith in Norris's totem phase, where an organized perpetrator manipulates the crime scene and narrative to evade detection. Keith displayed a chilling composure, as if he had mentally prepared for suspicion. He showed no signs of remorse, not a single moment where he paused to reflect on Amber, the children now motherless, or the consequences of his actions. But Keith was not a flawless criminal. He underestimated Betty's persistence, who called 911 after Amber was unreachable for 2 days.
I'm their grandma. She didn't take her truck because you can see it in the driveway.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Her phone, the bank card is still in the house.
Yeah. Betty, how many times do you think she's done that?
On July 2nd, 2019. Aurora police arrived at the Zotto home for a welfare check. Keith was absent, leaving his children to say their parents were not home. When police obtained permission to search, they discovered Amber's body in the trash bin, along with the gun, ammunition, and magazines. Keith's masquerade crumbled swiftly.
And he just looked at me, started crying. I said, "Oh my God, what'd you do?" Okay. And I asked him if Amber was okay. And then he looked at me and he said, "You know what? I don't remember anything." Okay. I just remember waking up and seeing her at the ground. Okay. I asked him what the hell happened to tell me what he did. Okay.
Under mounting pressure, Keith fled to his sister's house and confessed to shooting Amber. Yet, rather than expressing remorse, he claimed it was self-defense, alleging Amber had tried to attack him with a gun. This was a final attempt to mitigate responsibility, a behavior criminal psychology terms cognitive restructuring. Keith did not confess out of guilt, but because he knew escape was impossible. Aurora's SWAT team arrested him on July 3, 2019, ending his criminal journey. Keith's actions were not merely impulsive. He planned the cover-up with chilling precision, from hiding the body to fabricating the note. This isn't just a crime story, it's a descent. In this video, we'll break down how a seemingly ordinary man unraveled and what turned him into a killer. He thought only of evading justice, and when his plan failed, he tried to shift blame to Amber, as if she had driven him to this horrific act. Years of arguments over finances and family duties fueled his resentment, casting Amber as the source of his failures. These festering frustrations erupted fatally on June 29, 2019. Amber's intent to leave wasn't just a relationship ending, it was a threat to Keith's ego and the fragile family image he clung to. Her decision pushed him toward a desperate act to prevent the ultimate humiliation, abandonment. Though no prior physical abuse was documented, Keith's controlling behavior reflected a deeper cycle of emotional violence. His need for dominance simmered for years, slowly eroding any semblance of normalcy. Alcohol merely poured fuel on this fire. It didn't create his motives, jealousy, resentment, and fear of losing control, but it sharpened them, unleashing the storm that had long been brewing inside him. On May 11th, 2021, Keith Allen Zotto was sentenced to life without parole for the first-degree murder of Amber. Described by prosecutors as callous and remorseless, Keith transformed from a family man into a killer, driven by jealousy, resentment, and control. His crime shattered his family, leaving his children to grapple with the loss of their mother and the truth of their father's actions. Keith's story is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked domestic violence, a tragedy that forever scarred the Aurora community.